So I am recording. This will be available. And I actually did a little bit of preparation for this lecture. So huzzah! Not quite like a deck of slides like I'd eventually like to have, but I do at least have some visuals. Yeah, not a lot, but just a little. I want to ease you guys in. Don't want to shock your systems too much. So TDD, test-driven development. And the idea behind test-driven development is that you write your tests before you write your code. Your tests drive the code. So TDD has this general sequence of events. You guys, can you read that okay? So the first thing you do is you look at your requirements and you add a test. This is before you write the feature at all, although often you will write the function before you write the tests so that you'll have something to import and run in the test, because you are going to run your tests before you write your code also. You're going to run the test to make sure that the new test fails. What's the point of this?
I'm a little confused as to what you mean by have your function, but also develop your test.
Oh, yes. So you have like an empty function. You just have the function named, you have its parameters, but it just doesn't do anything inside. Okay. Yeah, thanks for asking for that clarification.
Oh, well, that's why it failed.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. Well, what's the point of running them at this point if you know they're going to fail?
Right.
To make sure your tests work. You want to make sure that they fail, right? If your tests succeed at this point, you got problems, right? And it happens, right? JavaScript's full of all that asynchronous stuff that, wreaks havoc. So, okay, then you write the actual code. You actually fill out that function. Sometimes you can call that a stub. You fill out that function stub that you created before. Then you run the tests again, and this time you need to make sure they pass. Then you refactor your code. This is not always necessary, but test-driven development can lead sometimes to code duplication or putting code in a place where it's not entirely logical for the rest of your project, just because you need to isolate it in order to run the test. So just refactor the code if you need to. If you're doing TDD, chances are you're going to be refactoring your code on a fairly regular basis. And then repeat. Okay. So questions about the process. Not all companies, but a lot do. Yeah. And so advantages. You know that your code is covered, that your code has test coverage. You know that that you are writing your code to satisfy requirements, as opposed to just sort of writing your code sort of with the requirements in the back of your mind, but not really considering them. And it forces you to write tests as you go along, because it's really easy to just like be coding and think I'll just write tests later. And then you can end up with this big test backlog that, and then you're just spending all of your time writing tests and you're not even, don't even remember what you wrote and so forth. So those are some advantages. The disadvantages is that sometimes it's hard to write a test just for one particular requirement without having to like sort of convolute your code in some ways. All right, so I made a sample thing, a sample set of requirements that we are going to write, that we're going to do some TDD development on. All right, so basically this is a shopping list CLI. It's, similar to the CLIs that you've been working on. So valid commands are, oh, and actually I think I want to add another one just to make sure it's explicit, which is the script should run from the command line as, okay. What's up, Jedi?
Is your Zoom broadcasting?
Oh, no. Okay, so you wanted to watch it from your desk?
I was trying to, but
okay.
Here too.
Yeah, I didn't use the Zoom that was on Slack. I'm like recording from another Zoom. I'm sorry about that. Is that cool? Like pull up a chair or something if you'd rather sit. I'll not do that again, Jedi. Okay. Okay. So, all right. So the script is going to be running from the command line as /shoppinglist.js. Okay, great. Valid commands are list, add, and delete. So we have a list, or you can do a list store, an add, store item, and a delete store item. Okay. The store must not contain any spaces. Otherwise, we're going to have difficulty parsing our arguments. And the user will get an error for any invalid command, including command usage. No, that's poorly placed modifier. Let me, okay. So the error is gonna include the command usage. Okay, cool. So we don't know exactly what these do, although you can guess, but so far we all good? Okay. All right, so the list command without arguments lists all stores, and beneath each store, the shopping list for that store. Cool. The list command with a store argument prints the shopping list for that store, and if the store doesn't exist, print an error. The add command takes two arguments, store and item. The store doesn't exist, create a new list for that store and add the item. Otherwise, just add the item to the existing store. If the add item is invoked with fewer than two arguments, print an error. The delete command takes two arguments, store and item. The store doesn't exist. Anyway, you know, like this, like we can get more into this. But if the store doesn't exist, display an error. If the store exists but the item doesn't exist, then display the possible items. And if the store and item exist, delete the item from the store list. So people who are giving us these specs are doing a great job, right? They're being very specific about what needs to happen. And then shopping list is persisted to a list.json file using fsread file sync and fswrite file sync. Okay, so are there any questions about the specs?
For the first time, no.
That's awesome. Okay. So, okay, cool. So now we get to start TDD. Where should we start? What do you guys think? Yeah, definitely writing tests. We've got a bunch of requirements. Where do you think it would be good to start? And there's no one right answer for this. What do you think, Misha?
Just to kind of get it started, like function should return a, is it a string or is it a...
Well, this actually doesn't talk about any functions. This actually talks about how the script itself is supposed to behave. And that's typical for specs, right? The specs aren't going to tell you how to break it into functions. They're just going to tell you the behavior that they want to see. Yeah. What are you thinking, Keith?
I'm thinking starting with the describes so that you're sort of almost pseudocoding it out.
Oh yeah, so we could do a bunch of describes for pseudocode. Yeah, I like that. Do you guys know that term, pseudocode? Pseudo meaning like fake. Pseudocode. Yeah, meaning like you're not actually coding, but you're thinking about the structure. What were you thinking, Miles?
I saw the first spec was that when you call a particular file, stuff happens.
Yeah.
So let's touch the file, get a boilerplate function in there so we can at least test that something is happening.
Okay, yeah. So we could just start with making the file, you know, and go from there. Yeah, Jedi.
Can you scroll down for 1 second?
Yeah, of course.
The ones involving FS.
Yes.
I would start with some kind of skeletal JSON information, and then start trying to test if I can save and read that JSON data.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So great. That's another great place to start. And actually, when I was preparing for this lecture yesterday, I wanted to make sure that I knew the node commands that I needed to know to like do this lecture, and those were the two places that I started. I started by doing these, and just basically this first one. And then this, the usage error command. And then the second thing that I did was the file, the persisting to a file. I'm sorry, one more time? Mocha and chai is what I'm using. Is there another question attached to that? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Can you? I do. Yes, I will. Actually, let me. So shoot, I'm not in Slack, which is part of the problem and why I didn't start. But yes, I will post this document in Slack. Do you want me to do it now so you can look at it, or? Great idea. Okay. I'm going to share it with a trusted person. Justin, why do you have both Justin and Justin H?
Long story. There was another Justin at the guild, and so I took over that email, but then it started causing problems, so Sharon created Justin H.
Got it.
But Justin works fine.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you very much, Justin.
Yeah.
Okay, so, cool. So he'll post that in Slack, and then you can look at it if you want.
So pretty much start with creating the file and testing.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, you might want to, I mean, when this is also like gets on a bigger topic of when you're starting a project, what do you do? Right? What do you like? And so what I would do if I was starting this project, even before I did the TDD, just to make sure that I wasn't getting myself in too deep, I wanted to write on the board, but I'll write here instead, just so that it's part of the recording. So what I would do is I would really think about what my file structure is going to be, right? Clearly, I'm going to have a shopping list. That's part of the spec. Do I want everything to go in shopping list.js? Probably not. That would be a lot. That would not be great code organization. Now, I know for 321 contacts, it asks you to put each command in a different file. I probably wouldn't do that. I probably would have another file that's commands.js. And so shopping list.js is going to have my CLI interface. That's what that's going to have. And then commands.js will have an add, a list, and a delete. Thank you. And you know what else I might put in commands.js is I might, and you know, I'll think about this, but especially based on TDD, I'm thinking that if I'm going to test this writing to a file, I might have read from file and write to file, just so that I have those modular and I can test them.
Yeah, I'm going to mention this because Stephanie and I were just talking about this.
Please.
Delete is a reserved keyword.
Oh my goodness.
JavaScript. And, easy thing to miss.
Thank you very much. Don't overwrite reserved words. All right, cool. So, yeah.
Clarification. So you're saying what you would do first is set up your file, set up your functions file, and set up your test file. And well, of course, the JSON file as well.
Test.js. Also.
Does the
Yeah.
test.js have to go in a test folder when using Poker?
Yes.
No.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Because every time it didn't work.
Okay, well we'll try it.
Okay.
But no, Mocha will either go into the test folder, or if there's something just called test.js, it'll run it like in the top level, it'll run that.
The file can be called test.js.
Yes.
Okay. I've always had to create. Okay. Never mind.
Yeah, so if I had a more complicated structure, a more complicated application, I probably would make a test folder and separate my tests into different files. But for this, I who knows? I might end up separating them, and then, so I could, I don't know. Now that I'm thinking about it, I might, does it need to be called test or tests? Do you guys know?
Yes.
Singular?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so in test, we could have something, how could we separate them? How could we separate out our tests?
For JS files.
And then we could maybe CLI, something like that. All right, cool. So this is feeling pretty good. We can always change our mind.
Right.
But let's go and oh, I'm in source already. Okay. So I'm going to make dir shopping list. And I think I'm going to do an npm init just so that I can do a npm test and have it run all my tests. So my packet, I'm doing my npm init not in my new directory because I made the directory, but I never CD'd to it. So that's a nice hint that I'm in my source directory. So I'm going to forget about that and CD into shopping list. That talking is going on yours too, huh? Let's put that somewhere. Okay, great. All right. So, all right. So shopping list, and now we'll do the npm init. Okay, that's fine. I think it might yell at me if I try and make a shopping list JS, but I'm not sure. I was thinking about, I also have my example code on Git, and I actually think I'm going to do that here too, just so that you guys, that's an easy way to get you guys the example code. And I also want to demonstrate how often I commit because it's really, really often. Okay. Fine, we'll edit the test and so forth. Okay, great. So now I've got my package.json. Let's make, we said we wanted a shopping list JS. We want commands JS. What else did we want? We want a test directory with commands JS and CLI JS. And actually, and let's, I think I want to say test commands, just to keep them nice and clean. Okay, cool. So we all good with the structure? Tree is really cool. I'd never heard of that before I started working here, but did you guys install that as part of Installapalooza? So that's really nice. It shows you the structure. Oh, yeah, you could be treeing forever. Yeah. Okay, cool. So, okay. So now we've got the preliminary work down. Oh, and let me do a git init. How familiar are you guys with Git? Is that part of stuff you've done? Okay. So what is the git init doing? Creating a local repository, saying, I want to start tracking these files with Git. If I want to see what's going on with Git right now, what do? Git status. Git status should be like a tick with your fingers. You just type git status all the time. Okay, and I have a bunch of untracked files. I try not to use star with Git as much as I possibly can, just because I always want to make sure that I know exactly what I'm doing with Git. So, okay, and then I'll commit the -A, everything, the M with the message. My Git commands, and Justin, I'm interested to hear if you do them differently. I capitalize and I do imperatives. Create file structure.
Sounds great.
Thanks. Okay, and then I put a period at the end. Okay. Oh, and it's upset because I haven't identified myself. So hold on. Just give me a moment. I haven't done it on this. Remember VI?
You guys know the text editor that she's working in right now? This is Vim VI. It's like the hipster. It's like the hipster text editor.
Yeah, that's right. Real programmers use VI.
Are you supposed to
Miles, always with the details. No, absolutely. You actually read the instructions, which I did not. So, oh yeah, escape : WQ. WQ if you want to save your changes. Q ! If you're like, get me out of here. I don't know what I did, but don't save it. All right, so I shouldn't get that error anymore. Okay. All right, now let's actually atom this baby. Okay, so, all right, so now I want to start writing my tests. Okay, and let's start with just that usage one, the one where if we invoke the file, or if we invoke the script and we don't give it proper commands, we're going to get that usage error. Okay. So, okay, so let's just go into test and CLI. And I like to, this is from my Python background. I like to put a comment at the top of every file. In Python, it's called a docstring. I don't know that JavaScript has anything official for it, but just to say what this is. So tests for shopping or CLI functionality of shopping list script. Okay. So now, all right, it's 24 minutes into the lecture and we're actually writing a test. So let's describe, what should this test be? Let's do CLI error cases, something like that. Okay, so now we need an it or two. What do we want to test for? We can look back at the spec. Yeah.
I've heard from some people
Yeah.
that Mocha doesn't like big arrow functions that are described.
Oh, really?
Maybe Jared?
Yeah, I think it doesn't like it.
Well, let's not make it mad. Better? Do you know why it doesn't like it? Okay.
It's something to do with the library. I don't know what exactly.
He said it was something about the way that the arrow function sees this. Sees
Oh, okay.
Mocha globals like before and after it are down to the same content.
Okay. All right, cool. So that just keeps our described separate then? All right. So, cool. So now, how about it? Are we allowed to use, or will Mocha be happy if we do that? Okay. All right. All right. So what do we want to test here?
So right now we're testing that it gives an error if it gets something that it doesn't like.
Yeah.
Now we haven't told it what to like. So we should be testing that it gives an error when it's code.
We are not testing its current behavior. We are testing its eventual behavior. And that's why when we run the tests at first, we expect them to fail. Yeah, but that's great to keep that clear. This is a test that we want to fail. The test is going to be based on the requirements, and we want it to fail. So let's go back here. And so I'm going to say it should show usage when no command is supplied. Fair?
So when you say error cases, are you saying you're trying to come up with cases that you know are erroneous?
I'm testing to make sure, yeah, you're right. That's a little bit, CLI usage display. Let's try that instead. I'm testing the cases where I want it to display that usage function. Is that better? Okay, so it should show usage when no command is supplied. Great. How am I going to test that? This is a little bit outside of TDD, but how do you test a command line function?
Qsync.
Yeah.
Child process.
Yeah. So how do we do that?
I think it's exec sync, and then the parameter of the command, and then what you want back. I believe. Not sure if I have to put it down.
Now I believe that. So the way I was doing this, and I'm just going to go back to what I know, is I was using exec, and exec takes a callback that and let's look at my sample code so that I can remember exactly what I did. So I have my sample code up here just to you guys that fine. Okay. All right, so I have to require exec. So I'm just gonna require that here. And then I'm going to, okay, yeah, so exec has this callback. If there's an error, it will be in this argument. This is standard out, anything that went to standard out, and this is anything that went to standard error. Do you guys know how to send things to standard out versus standard error from Node? It is. It's console.log and console.error. And those are just, they're separated in Unix just so that you can do different things with errors than you do with just sort of regular non-error output. So, and so let's just copy this for now, and then we'll pretend we didn't see that. And so it's going to exec this command. And then what I want is, oh, now let's get some chai in here. And let's use expect. Oh, in order to do this, I'm going to have to install chai. Keith, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm still a little confused about chai and its relationship to mocha, and sort of like what else is out there. It seems like, why doesn't mocha just put chai inside of itself or something? Is there other libraries? I feel like we always use chai.
Yeah, that's a good question. I have no idea. Justin?
Yeah.
Oh, Jasmine.
Jasmine
Where's
isn't a
Jasmine?
part of mocha.
So Mocha and Chai do two separate things. Mocha is the testing framework that runs tests. Chai is the assertion library. And just as a general principle, if you have something that does two different things, it can make sense to keep them separate. So that's one reason why you integrate something with Mocha, so that you can use it with different assertion libraries.
So does mocha make chai, or is chai add a bunch of stuff?
No, I don't know if that helps.
All right, so I'm installing, I'm doing a save dev because you don't need this testing stuff if it's production. So. All right, so that's just making sure that my require is going to work okay. And now I'm gonna do expect, and I'm gonna do standard error. Because this is going to be usage commands and it's an error condition, I'm gonna output to standard error instead of standard out. Does that make sense? And again, the difference between standard error and standard out, they're just treated differently. For example, if you do a redirect, it will just redirect standard out. It won't redirect standard error into your file. Or some shells will make standard error a different color than standard out, right? They're just treated differently. And this seems like a good case for standard error rather than standard out. Okay, so I'm going to expect standard error to include usage. Fair? Okay.
So I just want to be sure I'm understanding.
Yeah.
The exec is going to execute.
It's going to execute this command.
But that's a JSON
Oh, God.
file.
It's going to execute this command.
And whatever if the code that's in that command throws an error and prints it to.
It's not throwing an error. This is if it throws an error. This is if it prints something to standard error.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if the error throws an error gets caught, if you told it, console.error this, then the exec function will put it into this callback where we will expect to grab it and analyze it.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm teaching a lot here that's not TDD, so I hope you'll forgive the digression.
No, I regret. I appreciate the thoroughness.
Okay, cool. Other questions? Okay, so now I'm going to run it. But before I do, this is the stubbing out thing that I was talking about before. I just want to make sure that at least my shoppinglist.js is runnable. And what do I need to do to make it runnable? Not necessarily. All I have to, so actually I can just try here. If I do shopping list, what's going to happen? Yeah, but it's actually even worse than that.
This is just going to return back to that.
No. I'm going to get an error.
You're already in there.
Permission denied. What's it talking about?
Oh, I can't read it right.
I haven't made it, it's executable that matters in this case. Executable. How do I look at its permissions? Maybe ls-l. It is not executable by me or by anybody else. I can make it just executable by me, change its mode so that the user can execute. Again, there are so many different ways you can do change mode, and like a lot of people like to use the numbers, but for something like this, it's easier than trying to think about the numbers. Shopping list.js. Now nothing happens. I know that later though, I'm gonna wanna run it with Node, so I'm gonna give it a Node shebang now, just for the heck of it. So, and hold on. I forget how to do the general Node shebang. So let's go back to my cheat sheet here. All right, user bin env node, and that's what will find the system node, the regular node for the system. And that way it can be run on a computer other than mine, where, you know, here I actually have a pretty standard node, but in my Bonnie user, I'm using NVM, and so my node is like way inside an NVM folder, which is not going to exist on somebody else's computer because it has /user/Bonnie, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so cool. So now I have this, works fine. Now let's make sure that I have my test command. Yeah, that's not what I want. So just do Mocha. Cool. Okay. Oh my God, it passed. How on earth did it pass? It ran the test. I have an expect there. I have an expect. Why is that expect not throwing an error? We know that it's running this file though, because I say it should show usage when no command is supplied, and sure enough, it's running that test. And this is why this step is so important. And this is actually one of the reasons that I took us through like this sort of painful how you test a command line thing, although that'll be useful for you later also. But because I specifically wanted to point out this condition. You have a test, it's supposed to fail, but it passes. You're getting a false positive on the test. There's no point in starting to develop. This is a bad test.
I like how you did that, because most of us will see a green check mark and go, good.
Yeah.
Boom, next.
Yeah.
So you're saying the first one is supposed to fail, and the fact that it passed means that lets you know right then and there to make some adjustments.
Yeah, because this is saying that the standard error is supposed to include the string usage. When I do this, what does standard error include? Absolutely nothing. There's been nothing printed to standard error here. I mean, for heaven's sake, my file is just this.
Right. Okay. This is a good lesson. Don't get happy on our own.
Yeah, no. Green check is not always good. As a matter of fact, sometimes this is called red-green testing. You need to get red first, and then you get green. If you're getting green first, something's wrong. It's not a valid test. Exactly. Just doing my job, ma'am. All right, so yeah, we need to fix it. And so what's going on here, and this is something that's particularly difficult for me coming from the synchronous world of Python. We're having async problems here. And Justin actually explained it to me this morning because I was having trouble really wrapping my mind around what was happening. I knew what I had to do, but I wasn't really sure why. And Justin explained it this way. So this is, this describe function is synchronous. And so it's going to run this it. And then the next thing, if we had another it would run that. And then it would run that. And it would not wait for this callback to get called. It just runs this it finishes running this it, and it's like, okay, that it was done. Were there any assertion errors or expect errors? No, because this hasn't even happened yet, right? There were no errors. So it's like, great, I'm just moving on. It's not waiting for this before it checks to see if there are any errors. And the way we get it to wait is we use, we use this done callback on the it function. And basically what I'm saying is don't check for errors until this callback has been called. And if I put the done here and I call it, and you can call it whatever you want, but it's traditional to call it done.
So it's just the argument.
It's just the argument that's going to the it function. Now, it will not just blithely move on to the next it. It's going to wait until this done function is called, and then it's going to check to see whether any errors were thrown. So now, red.
Yay.
That's great. All right, questions on what we did there? Yeah, Keith.
Is all you have to do asynchronous testing with Mocha and Chai use done, or
if you
have to do more than that?
I mean, if you're dealing with promises, you can also do your .thens as well. I am not an expert in asynchronous testing with Mocha and Chai, so I can't make any blanket statements. I'm sorry. All right. Other questions that I can't answer, possibly? All right. So, all right, cool. So now we can start actually making, now we can start writing to this test. All right, 42 minutes into the lecture and we're writing code. Woo. All right, so here now, go away. Go away. Oh, great. Oh yeah. Oh no. Yeah. No. It's intentional. It's I'm going slow intentionally. Okay. Let's get you down there. Okay. So now. All right. So now. What are we even gonna do here? So the requirement that we are trying to meet is. The user gets an error for any invalid command. Okay, so maybe I need to start parsing the commands. How do I get what the command is? Do you guys remember? What number is it going to be? So it's going to be 2. The node is implied, but it's going to be part of it. Is that right? Actually, I want to print out. Because this is actually me wondering because I haven't done this before. So I want to console log our process, just so that I know what actually happens if you're not putting node on the command line. Yes, it does put the node in there for you. And then it puts your script as the second. Okay, good to know. So we really do want the third one. And then, as long as we're doing this, let's see, store is going to be process.argv3, just based on the way this was defined. If there's another argument, it's always going to be store. And then item, what process.argv what? But what if my item is, I want to go to Trader Joe's, Trader_Joe's, because the store isn't allowed to have spaces, and I want to buy lavender dryer sheets.
Join at the end of the item.
Slice.
I would do yes, both,
Slice
yeah,
or
stop,
join.
or, wait, you're both right. Or how does that go? Stop, you're both right. So yes, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to slice, starting at item 4. That's going to give us what data type? An array. So that's where the dot join comes in. And we'll just join on nothing.
Whoa.
No,
Would this throw errors if we only said list?
no, because JavaScript, if we only said what?
If we just said list, so that argument 2 was, a thing. but then
Good question. Let's try it. Apparently not. JavaScript is a much more, one person would say forgiving, one person would say annoyingly, confusing language than Python, which, as you, I'm sure, picked up, is my primary language. It doesn't throw errors a lot. And I think the reason for that is that its origin was running in browsers. And if you're running in some client's browser, you would rather have it try and carry on than throw errors all over their browser. That's my hypothesis anyway. So yeah, but good to check. Good to check. Okay, so now let's do a switch on the command. And we can say if the command is list, you guys know switch? What do I put down here? Default. What to do if none of these other cases are true? Console error, right? Because I'm looking for standard error. And then I'm going to just say usage. Actually, I'm going to use backticks because I want to make a multi-line string. And that lovely person who wrote out the requirements, I can just put those right in. Okay, should we try the test again? Green, okay.
So there weren't, you didn't, in terms of the switch statement, there wasn't anything in the code block that should happen.
Yeah.
I was wondering the same thing. Why didn't you have to invoke the function or the command right there?
Because are you talking about line 15 or are you talking about up here?
Just in the switch statement, in the code, underneath the case. The other way I've seen it done is add command, or you have the add command actually.
And I definitely want to do that eventually, but that's not what I'm working on. That's not the requirement I'm working on right now. In fact, I could even, I was just putting those in to help my future self, but I can still run if I didn't put that in. The requirement that I'm working on right now is that it's going to give an error if you don't give it any sort of command. And now, so let's look and make sure that we've tested everything for that requirement. The user gets an error for any invalid command. So let's do another test here. What might the other test look like? Yeah, so let's take this. And this one, I'm actually, the way I've written my code, I'm not going to get a red on this one. It's just, and I could have written both of them beforehand, right? These could be both part of the same requirement. I could just say like that. And really for pure TDD, I should have written this one before also. Make sure. Okay. All right, questions before we move on to just another TDD thing, Jedi's suggestion of working with the file.
I'm not sure if this is a TDD question or more so like
Bring it on.
I know there's like context options and other things like that. There's some before and after. Does context actually affect the way the test is run, or is that just for your looking through the test output?
Yeah, no, those before and after definitely affect how the test is run. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to use it for what we're going to do with Jedi right now.
Thinking of specific, like there's a context.
Oh, there's an actual context?
Yeah, like
It's the same
context. If
Oh.
number in this context, then run these big tests.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah, thanks, Jedi. This is...
What I've seen them is like they put the context under the describe,
Yeah.
so they can just nest all the like you want to separate out functions in one describe. Right.
Okay. We're out of my Mocha depth. I'm sorry. Yeah.
So where's the organizational type?
Okay. Okay, so let's now go into our test command. Oh man, and I told you I was going to be doing all of this Git, and then I completely forgot. So, all right, I wanted to do Git when I had written the test and it failed, and then I wanted to do Git when I had written the code and it succeeded, but I can't turn back time. So, see, oh, okay. I definitely want to ignore those node modules. I'll add the package lock and the package JSON. So
What is the package lock as opposed to the regular package?
Yeah, the package lock is other node stuff that you have installed globally that people won't be able to see just from the package.json.
It's just that it's a little bit different.
Oh, Justin.
I might be wrong.
No, I'm sure.
So the idea with the package lock is in your package.json file, you're specifying I want Mocha and I want Chai. And usually the specification will say I want a certain version level or higher. The package lock.json tells you the exact version that you have installed. And so that way you can commit that, and when someone else wants to run your code, they will also install the exact same version, even though the package.json has a more general thing. So if you want Mocha version 4 or higher, they'll be able to, that package lock file, install Mocha 4.1.2, which is what you were running. And that prevents some of the problems when you're running different versions of.
Yeah, thanks, Justin.
Yeah, and then all of that other stuff is all of the dependencies of Mocha and Chai. So those depend on a lot of other libraries, and so it's listing which exact versions of those dependencies it has. Make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. Okay, so let's go back and all right, and then I want to make a git ignore for my node modules. And I'm going to put my list.json in here also because I don't want to commit my actual shopping list to my GitHub. So do that. So I'm going to commit the git ignore and say add node modules and list JSON file. Need to add it before you can commit it, but thanks for the up arrow. Okay, and then git commit package.json and package lock.json. Add Muka and chai. And then git commit the rest of it. Add tests for invalid commands and add tests and code for invalid commands.
So do you generally kind of break up your commits, or you're just trying to replicate what has happened?
I'm trying, both. Yeah, I tend, I don't know. I tend to go with more commits that are more specific. Other people will go with like one commit that has a big long message. Engineer preference and possibly preference of your employer. Okay, great. So now let's actually go into our test commands. For command test supporting commands for shopping list script. Okay, so let's just do file read write. That will be our describe here. And let's do an it creates the file if it does not exist. Sound like a good test, good first test? Well, how are we going to test that?
First, well, I mean, the way that I did this was I created a function that essentially destroyed the file.
And I'm going to do that as a before each, because I think for any file read write, I want to start with a fresh file. So I'm going to say before each. How are we going to destroy the file?
Yeah.
And now this is an interesting, we just have a couple minutes left, so I'm probably not going to be able to finish this, but when I was doing this myself yesterday, one of the things that I made sure to do was in my top level file to actually say where the list file was. And I'm actually making it an all caps constant, something that I just intend to sort of use as a constant. And for now, I'm going to say list.json, but in the future, I would make it a test file, right? I would check my environment variables. If I was in a test environment, I would use a test file. Otherwise, I would use the actual file. That's something that we talked about last week when I was talking about some other stuff. I don't remember what. And down here, we'll export it. All right, so now in my test command.js, I can say const list file And I'm going to do this because I think I'm going to I might be exporting other things from that file. Require, and now this is going to be /shopping list.js because that it's I'm in my test directory now. And I don't have to put the JS there. Optional, I can. Okay, and so now I don't have to worry about changing the list file location. I can just use this list file constant, and then later, if I change it to be a test file, then that's fine. I'll still be just using it, using whatever got set in shopping list based on the environment. Do you guys understand why this is good practice here rather than hard coding it in? Yeah, so if I instead just said here, I said list.json, and then here I would check, I think it's like file exists or something. And then I keep doing that for all of my tests. Then later, if I decide to change the location of the file, if I decide to change the name of the file, or if I decide to use a test file for my tests and not pollute the real to-do list file, I have to go through and I have to change it everywhere. It's much nicer to use this list file, and then I only have to change it in one place. And it the change propagates down to wherever I've referenced it as list file instead. Are there questions on that? That's really like, that's a pretty basic programming style thing, but it's something that if you do it at first, it'll make your life easier later.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I've seen examples where, like within the test, they'll build like, say the function takes multiple parameters or something. They'll build a factory function that spits out an object, and then they use the object for the test, and then they'll actually destroy the object. So like, is that just to keep it more clean, or what is it?
Yeah, it's to keep it clean and to make sure the tests are entirely predictable, right? You want to make sure that you are working with well-known input. Otherwise, it's really hard to know whether the test did what it was supposed to do. Yeah, it's the same reason that you use a test database when you're testing databases. You don't use your production database. You want incredibly well-defined input. And also, you just don't want to mess up your real database with your tests. Like, that's the other reason. Okay, it's 11:02, so you can finish this as an exercise for yourself if you want, or you can practice TDD when you're working on your benchmarks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
This is considered